And welcome to another episode of Who Gives a Who. This is, I guess, the start of our fourth season of the pod officially. Um, so you got me, Luke. I'm still here for right now, but joining me today we've got Kyle and Jr. Who they're going to be helping out with the pod this year. Ryan being a big man about town. We'll be jumping in when he's available, but let's get some perspective on the first game of the season. We've had a couple player announcements since we last spoke on the pod. More defenders. I believe our first academy signing. I don't think we talked about that on the last one. And backup goalkeeper with Ian McGrain there. So quite a bit of changes here. Seems like everybody has reported. I know we were a little bit worried about whether visas and everything would get processed in time. But considering that everybody even has a photo with current jerseys and current numbers.
That's what I was just looking at. I was surprised.
Luca did not until a couple days ago. And
he's there.
I wasn't checking every day. And then on during the gap of when I wasn't checking, I happened to see him getting a cup of coffee in town. Checked after I saw him and his photo was there. So he's been here since at least yesterday afternoon.
Well, he's here before the first game, so that's something to be said. But first game, it's the first time I think the first game of the season has been a home. I'm going to use quotes for that. Home game for Union Omaha, since we're playing at Kyle's place of employment, the University of Nebraska at Omaha.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I don't think this first year we started at Revs 2.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Next year we started. I'm blanking.
I want to say we started last season at Tormenta.
No, last season we started at Madison.
Last season was Madison, and then the year before
Tucson
was.
No, it was Toronto in Arizona, wasn't it?
No,
we might have started that at home.
We hosted Tormenta.
We
went on the road for a month.
We hosted Tormenta for our first game,
and then we went on the road for a long time. Yeah, so I guess we did technically host. So it's only our second out of 4.
Okay, so earliest game we will have hosted.
That's definitely
true. Think is that's the fair
for sure.
Yeah, because the second season was
in April.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the second season did push back again due to COVID, and I think also some teams looking to get ready in time for it. Mm-hmm. But we have a very full roster at this point. I don't think we could really ask for a whole lot more depth-wise, and I feel weird saying that. We have 8 signed defenders.
I don't think we've ever had 23 before match day 1.
No, I don't think we have. 8 signed defenders, 10 midfielders, and some of our midfielders, calling them midfielders is questionable.
Yeah, it depends on the system that we play, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But with only 3 forwards signed and 10 midfielders, you think that there might be some intermingling there.
That's also if you want to take the position assignments on the website as canon. I don't.
I certainly don't. For instance, we have a number 9 on the team. And that being Pedro Dolabella, who recent signing, played last year at Rochester,
R.I.P. New Rhinos.
He was MLS Next Pro All 11.
You mean Vardy's Rhinos?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was MLS Next Pro. Ben actually cited, well, his name was brought to the pod back in 2020 with Ben's interview with Alal, which you can find on our blog at The Journey for Alal, where Alal cited him as the future at Marshall and a player to watch. And 3 seasons later, he's here at Union Omaha after captaining Marshall to a national title. Like, that's a good signing there. Interested to see how, because he's one of our younger guys, which is surprising. We brought in a lot of talent, but a lot of seasoned talent. Throwing him in as technically a midfielder per that, but if you take numbers being a player picking 9, they're going to be wanting to play typically more of that striker position. So I'd put us at 9 midfielders and 4 forwards. But again, we need to see the boys in action, which we've had, unfortunately, not a huge amount for. Any spot on the field that worries you guys for us? Like, I know we haven't seen them play, but we don't know exactly what Dom's going to be doing positionally. But is there, looking at the roster, looking at Rich's articles and your own research on it, is there anywhere that really worries you against the teams in League One?
I'll just always worry about the spine if players haven't played together. So I think every team that's playing with either new center mids or new center backs, if the team hasn't had a chance to gel, they're just going to struggle early in the year. So that's just always what I'm going to keep my eye on in the early part of the season, regardless of the talent, regardless of a player's potential ceiling. It's if they haven't played often enough together, one mistake can mean a game.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree there. With our defense having only 1 returner on there, and whether he's actually a defender being questionable as well, with Schaff Brewer, who was a late addition last year. I definitely see where you're coming from on that, but it's not that there's any lack of experience on our defensive line. Like, we've got some young guys, but we also have guys who have done this. They've done this at higher levels. They've done this internationally. And I think that they have the professionalism to work together from day one.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of echo that sentiment as well, even though defense is kind of where I would pick too, just again because we haven't seen them is really more than anything else, right? We haven't seen them at all. We don't know them as well. Whereas we know what our forwards are gonna, at least we know what Noe looks like. We know what our midfield is at least somewhat gonna look like, and then we of course knew in goal. So the defense is really the spot where we just haven't seen people.
But
so I think that's why.
So I think this all depends on if you believe Junior Palacios is going to be a regular, at least as a starter. And if you do, whether or not he's going to play right back or somewhere like center defensive mid. He's done both. And if you put him at center defensive mid, that puts Shaft at right. But if you put him at center defensive mid, then how does the entire midfield setup look? And this is not just what you get with match day 1, but it's with match day 1 with the 50% roster turnover and a new coach. So
this is with JP and Connor, who you would think were locks, right? Like, you would assume them to be locks, but again, if you put someone else in center defensive mid, how do they get
I
on the
still
field?
think
How
that I
do they
still
stay
think
there?
they are. It's, do we play
Well-
5 midfielders? Is it really 5 midfielders, but it's honestly 3 because of how aggressive we play offensively?
And two very attacking wingers, which I could see, like you could see Joe Brito and maybe one of the new signings like Joe Gallardo or Luis even from last year. You could see someone like that pushing up the wings too. So
Or even Noe, if we
Possibility.
decide to play one up top, one up
Mhm.
top into Santos, they're really. I think we kind of have a couple of those switchblade kind of players this year, more than we're normally used to
Mhm.
seeing, and it's just with a new coach and potential new tactics, it just leads for a little more, not anxiety, a little more excitement and anticipation, maybe a little anxiety.
Definitely more unknowns, right?
Mhm.
Because we had at least an idea of what Jay would do, even if the players were new like they were last year. But
Yes, we did.
now
So did
now we
everybody else
don't.
in the league.
Mhm.
No, I like we don't know what realistically, without having a single preseason match that we've watched, that we've been able to scout, without having seen Dom. This is going to be his first ever professional head coaching gig or game. Like there are a lot of unknowns going into this, and I I'll say it this way: there are two ways to look at an unknown. You can look at an unknown as something you're afraid of or something you're excited for. And I would definitely say this is an unknown to be excited for.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I have high hopes for this season.
Yeah, I think the raw talent last year was there, but it was raw. I think the talent alone this year, the guys who were first year last year that have returned, the new guys that are coming in, as well as the veterans that have been brought in, like there's more finished talent on this team. And going into a potential like first game against Madison, a very revamped Madison, a scary Madison, to be honest. Probably the most dangerous side they've put on the field since 2019. And not that 2019 side was drastically different than the next 2 years, but it was the first year of the first year of the league, and so nobody knew what anybody else was doing. That being said, I think these guys have the ability to put us into another cup run. It's going to be more of a challenge since we're first time ever hosting a higher tiered side at home for this. We played 3 MLS sides last year, but we were away at every single one of those.
And we only hosted lower and equal level. So yeah, hosting that one step up.
Worth noting, you still don't know the ticket situation for that game, which is pretty par for the course from last year. Time of recording this on March 24th. Tickets are still not available for the April 5th match of Union Omaha versus El Paso Locomotive at Morrison Stadium in downtown sunny Omaha.
Hopefully sunny.
It's sunny today. Like
last year that first game was pretty rainy.
Oh yeah, last year they opened
No,
cup game. It was bad. That was just cold.
Well, yeah, it wasn't sunny. It wasn't raining. It was just fairly cold.
I thought it was even raining a little bit, but maybe I'm off.
I think it was might have rained earlier in the day, but it was just miserable.
Or you could just be remembering Chicago and where it was and what it was like in Chicago.
Possible. Okay, Madison coming in, they picked up some one we know used to love, Jake Krull, solid central defender, solid left back. He doesn't know the team he's playing against. He knows a couple guys on it. played with a couple guys on Union Omaha, but ultimately I don't think he has anything that would be considered insider knowledge at this point.
Especially with the new coach.
Yeah. Like looking at it just briefly without having done a whole lot in there or like whole lot of digging on Madison. No.
Cheney's a big signing.
Yeah,
Cheney's a
he's the
big
guy.
signing.
He's the guy I can't believe they got, and I can't believe they got him kind of that early. I have a feeling with how Fuego's been announcing their roster the past week. I'm not sure what the health of that club was at the end of the season, what kind of discussions were being had in back offices, because they all of a sudden they've announced like 9 or 10 players in the last 3 days.
Well,
some of them coming back.
Play their first. Yeah, they were supposed to play their first game on the 22nd. And that ostensibly was moved because of flooding in the Central Valley. However, considering the signings that have been coming out this week, maybe it wasn't moved because of that.
I wonder if they were just having issues logging players to the Federation.
That's also a possibility.
But either way, to get off of talking about Fuego when we're playing Madison this weekend,
we just don't like talking about Madison. We don't want to give them any bulletin board material.
I think they're in a situation where they have, if they're not playing 5 in the back, which obviously they probably aren't. You don't know there are 5 players that could probably start for them realistically in their first game. And I think there's going to be, one man left off. Timmy Meal, am I saying his name right? Loan spell for Chattanooga a couple of times. Brought him on. Of course, Osmond he was the captain for them by the end of the season last year, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the other names are escaping me.
Morrow, who was brought on from Charleston back in January. Bartman, who was solid for them last year.
Well, Gebhardt as well. Gebhardt played for them last year too and scored a number of goals.
Exactly. He can play multiple positions. So there's going to be some unknowns with their lineup, not just because of the turnover, but just because, even with Jake Kroll, he can play left back, he can play center back. You're kind of, at least both coaches right now are kind of going into the same preparation for the match this week as we'll know when it hits Twitter.
Yeah, essentially,
and then we'll get the formation when it starts.
Yeah, like we'll figure out what we're gonna do, and then we'll see what they're doing the hour before the game and try and maybe adapt. But at least these first couple games, I think that is going to be the case of, okay, let's try and do what we do well, and then maybe start game planning once we have a bit of a better idea.
And I definitely think that's the way we're going to have to play on this, because with a team like Madison, team like Union Omaha this year, there's not a whole lot of tape on anything that we've done. I think we have a chance to not get figured out until at least halfway through the season, especially with as deep a roster we have and as many guys who could be starters at any team in the league. Obviously, not everyone's going to be starting. Not everyone with a 23-man roster. We're going to have 5 guys sitting out, not on the bench every time. And because we only have 2 goalkeepers, that's guaranteed to be 6 field players. So where do you pull those from? Madison similarly brought in some decent attacking power, some solid ended up with some solid defenders, Jake Kroll being there, but they have the same sort of core that we have in their rebuild. We've got to play our own game, and the question is, with our preseason and like how we only played really 6 games in the preseason, I'm sure, and not everybody was even there. Luca and Steven both had, I believe both had visa delays. Haven't confirmed that, but just following everything that's been going. So they didn't even get in for 2 of arguably bigger signings defensively and offensively haven't been able to mesh with everybody on there. And maybe they'll come in, be smooth as butter, and won't have an issue. But we've got to play our own game, and it really just depends on how good our own game is at this point in time. Like, Dom seems confident. I went to the team talk on Tuesday with him and Peter. Dom definitely seems confident going into the game. Ran into Eddie earlier this week. He seemed confident that the guys are and the team is really meshing. Seems like there's a lot of positive energy going into this season. Very different feel than last season. And I think that's been echoed by every returner. But the same way that we were talking, it's an unknown, but not a negative unknown. It's an excited unknown. I think that sentiment is echoed throughout the locker room right now.
I think bringing in more players with more professional experience than last year. Last year, we did rely, I think, a little bit more on either players that were maybe like first-year unproven pros, guys like Montestioca, and college guys, of course, like Noe, who, of course, turned out to be one of our best players, and Hugo. But instead, we're bringing in guys like Steven Dos Santos, Junior Palacios, Luca Mastrantonio. These are guys that have not just been, not just professionals for multiple years, but professionals in the United States for multiple years. They know how lower league soccer in the United States works. They know the schedule. They know
Travel.
travel and how and how training works. Now, I don't think any of them maybe are used to starting a preseason training program in weather like ours and having to basically only train indoors until you maybe start playing friendlies. But I honestly think that once you have enough experience, that's just training is training.
Well, I think the training in weather like ours is good. Look at the first game. It's been whether it's going to be raining or snowing or just cold all week. Still looks like there's going to be some snow, dusting of snow in the morning. Like this is about as Nebraska a first game as you can get. And luckily it's being played on some of the best turf in the Midwest. One of the best college.
Which it is turf and not grass. So that is something to keep in mind.
The thing that's always been kind of, and we talked about this a little bit with Dom, something that has clicked over the past month or so since conversation with him is I don't think we ever really practice on grass. Like
not unless Werner is ready for it.
Yeah, and like most of the time, especially like we're not practicing at Werner. There's a few times where you see the teams practicing there, but a lot of times you're doing Omaha Sportsplex or Papillion Landing or probably those new fields out there in La Vista that are all turf. Like because Nebraska has such a hard time keeping grass fields functional because the weather doesn't cooperate. Like our guys play on turf more than they play on grass. So is it going to be a benefit for us?
Well, I mean, for this week, I'm not sure you can make that assumption. Actually, you could say that Madison will have a little bit more familiarity because not only are they practicing on turf, but they're practicing on turf outdoors, stadium size probably comparable to Caniglia. And I mean, because I think they have, I'm pretty sure they have indoor practicing facilities. I just don't know. But I mean, you could see on their social medias that they've had, days where they've tried to clear the snow off of Breeze to be able to have enough empty space for practicing. So we know they're
But
practicing.
Have they gone full Mingo this year?
I know as far as the amount of snow, I know we couldn't have. So I don't know if they could have.
Yeah, Madison is coming in a better position just geographically, training wise, guys being used to it. But at the end of the day, they're all professionals at this point.
Exactly.
Like these are guys who should be able to adapt and grow to fit every condition, and weather shouldn't be an issue.
And honestly,
but
they're bringing in so many new players that it's a learning curve for everybody.
I think probably my biggest worry for us is Steven Dos Santos, because he's been in Cape Verde up until a week and a half ago. Like, how acclimated to the cold is he? Or Luca, who's been in Italy, which no, not as cold as Nebraska, not as fickle as Nebraska. Like those are two guys that have the potential to be very big players for us, as you've said, but just don't have necessarily the same experience with everything, and the same comfortability of to Nebraska weather as the rest of the guys who've been here since January, February.
The people who were going to be at the snowed out season ticket holder event.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lexi coming from Comoros, like it. Well, that's his national team. Born in France, but he's been in the States long enough. He's played Michigan. Like he's
Mexico winters. You can have weather that's very comparable to Nebraska.
Well, yeah.
Just not as much of the snow.
No, definitely. And like when he played in France, he was playing Le Havre, which is Normandy, which is northern France, which is not exactly warm all the time. Like, and that's a winter season there. So I think we've really much getting to the getting back to the point of they're professionals, they'll adapt. Like, the part that's going to be interesting for me isn't in this game necessarily, but Dom so far has only coached on larger fields, as far as I know. El
Paso played configured
for Union
baseball.
Omaha though.
Oh,
he wasn't head coach there. Like, so,
but he's got at least got some experience from like helping a team playing at a narrower field.
Yeah, but as we're not playing there until March, I'm sure he's run video and done as much prep as possible, but not having anybody on our defense besides Shaft, who, and again, whether Shaft's a defender or not, I will debate this. But having defenders who aren't used to how short that field is, or it's not particularly narrow. That was the one thing we were able to keep, but it, like, bare minimum regulation on that. It's an interesting thought I've kind of had, just how, like, will we look better in these games on full, like, larger size pitches outside of Werner than we will once we finally get into Werner?
Well, gosh, how many games will we have under our belt by the time we're playing at Werner?
Half the season.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad, but it's 2 at home Open Cup game that's not at Werner,
what is it,
and at
April
least 2 or 3 on the road. Yes, it's gonna be 5 or 6, and it's gonna be 5 or 6, and it's over a month from now. So, or maybe
Hailstorm is the first one, right? The 29th.
That sounds about right.
It's pups at the pit. It's pups at the pitch, not sweater.
Not
sweater. The sweater game.
Yeah. So I think we'll have 6 games, depending on if we would get another Open Cup game, but I don't think it would fall in those weeks, and it could, but I guess
Open Cup scheduling is different because of the League's Cup. There's that whole month where they're not going to schedule Open Cup games. So I think until you get to like the until you get to like the quarterfinals, then you're really compact on the front end, and then they open it back up on the back.
Okay, yeah. So we could potentially have another game before we would technically play at home.
And at that point,
Warner.
I think, you know, whichever players are the regulars, the chemistry is either going to be there or it's not going to be there, and you figure out how to play on different pitch dimensions together. I would not be too worried about that.
Because I guess that's something that we talk about a lot with our pitch, but I'd be curious to see if there's another field in the league that is also like very different, because I don't know if you hear much about that.
I don't know enough about where Greenville is playing, and I don't know if it's designed with football in mind, because sometimes when it is, they do put the stands a little closer to the sidelines, and as much as you would like to expand out the width of the pitch, you just can't without taking player safety into account, because of at schools like that, it's usually just padded like brick walls.
We've got 3 new pitches in the league this year. 4 maybe. Still don't know where exactly NOCO is playing and how many different pitches. But with Lexington, they're playing at a college pitch. Greenville's moving to a college pitch. They're playing at Furman, right?
Correct.
And then Knox, who they're also playing college pitch.
They're playing at the University of Tennessee, and it looked real good.
Yeah, like I honestly think they're all set regulation, close enough to regulation size for NCAA that it's not going to be an issue. I think we still have the odd pitch out. Because Fresno or Fuego or whatever, their college. Then Tormenta's got their own purpose built. Chattanooga has their purpose built.
Richmond's massive.
Charlotte, yeah. Like Richmond might be the only other outlier because it's played in something that's not designed as a soccer specific. And Breeze just isn't good, but it's not dimension wise bad. Just for the sake of time, let's jump into because this one could take a little bit. What are we thinking is going to be our lineup? Yeah,
Val,
this is a loaded.
I'll let someone else go first because I don't know.
Well, so by the time this pod's released, hopefully there's an article out on the blog about my preview for the match, where I do kind of guess what lineup. Maybe I don't know if it's to say I'd like to see or think we'll see, because again, you don't know if Luca's going to start, if Steven DeSantis is going to start. Steven DeSantis could obviously be a player that's probably more likely to come on for 30 minutes if Dom thinks he's not fit. But again, we don't know what kind of shape these guys showed up in, and we don't know how important chemistry actually is going to be to see somebody start. So I would say if we think Shaft is a defender and plays on the right, our backline could be Muller, Mastrantonio, Sawahi, and Brewer. And in the midfield, if you play 2 CDMs, like a 4-5-1 of sorts, it's Connor and Junior Palacios. And you're shaking your head, but I'm going to finish. And then
that's why I'm shaking my head, not saying anything.
And up top from left to right, you'd have Burrito, JP, and Nobi would almost be a right winger, but I mean, obviously can just flex and flow around the field as he sees fit, with Steven DeSantis up top alone, because Steven DeSantis is used to playing either up top by himself or as a center forward in a 3-forward formation, especially a lot last year from what I've looked up. And I think it's, he's comfortable both receiving balls in the slot from that position and also to kind of distribute a little bit from the center as kind of like a pivot formation. So that's kind of how I see it.
So, especially CDM, I don't agree. Because we brought back Giovanni. And that is Giovanni's role. Like, Giovanni is by trade a CDM.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He wears the 6. He plays the 6. He does very well as a 6. JP has, in the past, been as much an attacking midfielder as a holding midfielder. I think we do see a double 6 with JP and Shivani. I don't think Luca is going to start, but that kind of leaves me a little bit baffled on the back line. Because I'm still not.
It means Marco. It means Marco would have to start at center back. I'm not sure if Junior Palacios has that positioning in his repertoire.
So with Lexi in there,
mm-hmm.
like I could see, yeah, Lexi and Marco in the middle. Although we've got now Stefan, who is also like, he's new, but he was signed. He was signed by this team, like not last year's team. Like that, there's just so many questions I have because I'm so used to that 4 in the back, and I wouldn't be surprised if we played 3 in the back.
That was literally what I was going to maybe posit.
Yeah, no, then jump for it, because I'm at a loss back there.
Yeah, Kyle, do you think 3 CDMs or just 3 backs that figure it out as they go?
My thought is 3 backs, and you could play, again, if Luca's not ready to go, I'm almost curious if you do Lexi, Marco, and then could Palacios play the right back of the 3?
If he's not playing center defensive mid, he's playing right back.
So but I could see him maybe play the right back in a 3, so that we have Shaft as more of an attacking wing back, and then Mueller on the other side.
I tinkered with that too. I just didn't know how you would. How you would alter that on the left.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Mueller as that attacking wing back. Maybe, I don't know if he fully has it in his repertoire.
Maybe not as far up as a guy like Shaft would. We're so used to seeing that on the left side. But then
what you could do is you could play a more attacking winger on that left side, someone who they're going to be the one to push up instead of having the wing back overlap too much. So I mean, we have a bunch of those types of players too. I think we brought in a couple of those types of players. So I could see it be Burrito. I could see it be someone else. And then have like maybe a 5, like a 5 in the midfield, whether that's like 2-3, 3-2, whatever it ends up being. But because I could see two 6s as well if you wanted Chavani, if you wanted Connor could maybe be in there too, because he kind of likes to play that back a little bit midfielder at times. Because I'm almost curious if Dolabella plays like a 10, even though he's number 9. Mm-hmm. I almost am curious if he plays the number 10 role as like that attacking central mid.
I know the least about him coming into this season. I'm wondering if, because it was going to lead to my comment of, I mean, you also have to think about which players do you want on the bench, because you could probably sub them on in multiple positions, not have to worry about messing around with your formation too much. I think Shaft and Junior both pretty much do that, with Shaft having a little bit more on the same side of the field, with Shaft having a little bit more of an attack mindset, probably.
Do you sacrifice one of them then at the start to bring them on and impact the second half?
That's definitely maybe, like more of a mid-season, late season kind of decision. But if you're still trying to feel them out, I don't know. I think you put your best 11 on the field for the first game, and then you go from there.
I think Luis, if he's not on, he's on the bench. I do think that because he played so many games for us last season after coming in partway in, and then he just became a fixture. I'm sure with that experience and everything that he'll at least be on the bench.
I think we see Luis and Dion on the bench. Is they're both very Swiss Army-ish.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't be surprised to see, of course, at least one more defender on the bench. If you do end up sacrificing one of Shaft and Junior, or if maybe you put Luca on the bench if you're not going to start him, if he is still coming in stuff, maybe you still put him on the bench.
What would it be easier for us to just like who's gonna like who are our 7 on the bench? And who's our 11 starting?
Steinwasser, I could see adding just because you want your other forward on there, but
yeah.
And we have not even talked about Gallardo.
Yeah.
Well,
he was going to be my other thought as like an attacking winger. That would be maybe another thought.
Here's what I'm thinking, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but a 3-4-2-1. So 3 in the back with Lexi, Marco, and Junior.
Is that strictly Marco instead of Luca just because of
time in? Yeah. I don't think we see Steve in this game, but I think you see Joe start up there. I think you have Noe and Brito playing more of the top. Pedro probably on the bench. Dos Santos on the bench. Giovanni, JP, Connor, and I mean that fourth midfielder for me is kind of like the tough one. But putting on a guy
So wait, who are you tossing between then?
Like Dion as a possibility there, or Luis. Like I think it comes as like, do we want more of a defensive mind or do we want more of an attacking mind? Because Luis is more of an attacking player. Dion's a good servicing player, but
if it were me, I would try to be on the front foot as early as possible. They're going to be starting a keeper that has not played professionally in the States before. They have 2 keepers, one coming from college, one that's never played professionally in the States. I was trying to look up his professional experience. I forget where it was overseas. I feel bad about that now because I should have been a little bit more prepared for that. But it's kind of the first year where we're coming in and there's basically unknowns with Madison with their keeper situation. I think that's why maybe you're on the front foot a little bit early in the game. It's going to be tough because I think their defense is going to be stronger than what their midfield and what their forwards might do.
There's a reason you probably would. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And I think the same team in 2 different stints.
Rasha Burry, but he also did his youth career at Schalke and Eintracht Frankfurt. Like he's
right. German heritage, but has played for the Philippine national team, right?
Yes. So, you know what? I'm going to put Shaft as my midfielder over Luis or Dion. I'd like to see that because I think he's a more attacking-minded player than we've seen, and his speed in the midfield and his ability to track back and cover. It's almost like giving us 3-6s, but his ability to service from out wide is just so good.
You just make him run around.
Especially if we can get because you could see it last season, right? You could see it he would put a ball in, but there wasn't the communication there yet. But now that he's had that time, if that communication is able to work out, he's going to be really dangerous.
I'm excited, but unfortunately, we gotta call it for time. real quick, score predictions.
I'll say 2-1 UO.
I agree.
What was it last year? There was a 3-0 on everything.
Except for when we played chat.
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna stick with it. 3-0.
Bold as always.
And that is a legitimate. I do think we have the attacking pieces to score 3 and the defenders not to let in 1. Rashid between the sticks for his 4th season with Union Omaha. He's comfortable with the fans. He's comfortable with this league. And he's comfortable leading that back line. I think we're going to have a fantastic season. Wishing all the boys luck as they get ready for it. And guys, one last question for you. Who gives a hoot?
We
We
do.
do.